You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Lloyd Banks, a former nightlife mogul in Texas who built and sold successful nightclubs, restaurants, and bars. After overcoming MS and chemotherapy, he found true happiness by quitting what didn't serve him. Now, as a work-life harmony speaker and master in the art of quitting, Lloyd helps others find their path to a fulfilling life through his transformative journey. Welcome, Lloyd.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Great to have you here. Now, what fascinated me about you, we never talk about quitting as a strategy, but you do. So tell us more about using quitting as a life, work, harmony, winning strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I spent 25 years in the hospitality business. I owned a lot of bars and nightclubs and restaurants and things. And I'm not sure exactly. Well, I got a pretty good idea when it was, but it was a ways into it, several years into it, that I realized how absolutely miserable I was, and the things that I had done to my life with my, self-destructive lifestyle that I kind of attained, and the relationships that I had destroyed, or at least partially destroyed, because of my, my work, and everything was work. And I was one of those hustle culture guys, and all I did was work. And so, it cost me my marriage. It cost me for at least a few years relationship with my oldest. And, it just wasn't a good thing. And it wasn't until I realized that there was things in my life that I needed to quit, and I started quitting those things, that my life started to miraculously get better. And, I'll give you the happy news is that my wife and I actually got remarried, and my relationship with my kids is great now, and life is wonderful and beautiful, but it wasn't for a lot of years. So I realized that, we're always told in this life to never quit, and quitting is bad and quitting is awful. And I realized that, quitting is what has gotten me to the life that I have now, which is a beautiful, happy life that I'm absolutely in love with. And I wake up every day thankful for the life I had. And I would not have it if I hadn't quit so many different things.
Okay. Now, some could argue that you did build up a business, made money, and then said, I should quit. So You're not saying not to do stuff. You're saying just figure out like when you should pull the plug on it and do that.
Yeah. And like I tell people all the time, never quit on your dream, never quit on your team. There's a lot of things you should not quit. My daughter is a very competitive soccer player, and there's no way I would let her quit on her team. If she decided she wanted to quit because she was unhappy and just wasn't bringing her joy anymore, then I would let her do that. I grew up a really competitive tennis player. I went to a tennis academy my junior and senior year of high school, and then I played in college. And at some point I realized it wasn't bringing me the joy that it once did. And so I quit. And because I quit tennis, I ended up, it sounds funny, but I found a fraternity. And some people are like, well, great, a fraternity. What'd you do? Drink beer and chase girls? Yeah, I did a little bit, but I also discovered my first taste of entrepreneurship with my fraternity, because it was just like a small business. I mean, we had to have, you had to have goals, you had to have a vision and a mission, and you had to hire people and manage money and, all of that good stuff. And I tried to do everything in the fraternity, and I was good at it. And that's when I really discovered my passion for business. But had I not quit the tennis team, I may have never found it.
Okay. So there's some nuance here, because I was thinking when you were speaking, if people just say, well, I'm not going to do anything I don't like and I'm going to quit it. I mean, that's generally what people do. Right. Generally, we don't need to tell people to quit, because they quit anyway too soon. They do something for 5 minutes, then they quit. Where's that point where people should quit?
I think when you figure out that you're either unhappy, miserable, or you're not reaching your goals, because again, never quit on the dream. If your dream is whatever it may be, I would never tell people to quit on their dream, but maybe whatever path you're following to try to get to that dream is all wrong. Maybe you need to quit that path. Maybe it's time to find a new avenue, a new way towards that dream, because what you're doing is not making you happy, and it's not getting you to where you want to be. So, it's again, people say all the time, never quit. And I think they should say something more simply like, hey, quit the bad and keep the good.
Right. Because you said you help people to quit like unhealthy eating habits or
Right.
quit other habits. So certainly we all know quitting smoking is a good thing.
Very good.
I quit. That's a big campaign about quitting. That was a positive quit. And
Absolutely.
and eating wrong foods, that's a
Yeah.
good quit. And drugs and over imbibing and alcohol. So obviously we know that we do want to quit certain things, right?
Right.
And but where does it come in that people need your help because is it that they're like hate their jobs and it's like, well, I think I have to just settle for that. Do you help people quit their jobs?
I'm a keynote speaker, so I don't say it in my keynote because I don't
Mhm.
want people to never want to hire me if they think I'm going to come in and tell all their people to quit. Sometimes in my one-on-one coaching, there's certain clients that I've had that I've told them like, "Hey, I keep seeing that every bit of your misery seems to come from your job. Have you ever thought that maybe it's time for a change?" And so I try to rarely tell people to quit their jobs. Again, but a lot of times people aren't miserable in their jobs. They're miserable. They think they're miserable in their jobs, but if they would quit, maybe it's they're overcommitting at their jobs. Maybe it's, hey,
Mm.
you know what, maybe I don't need to have 12 meetings a day. Maybe
Mhm.
we could have 2 meetings a day, and maybe instead of an hour long, they could be 10 minutes long. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, it would free up my day to actually be successful in doing the job that I used to love at some point, or at least
Mm.
like. And so, so it's not always quitting your job. Maybe it's just rewinding and thinking about what is it about my job that's making me unhappy, and is there a
Mhm.
possibility that I can make changes within my work?
Right. Okay, so let's talk about entrepreneurship because you were an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and you weren't quitting and you realized, I'm not happy and you lost your wife at one point, not lost, but
Yep.
you left each other, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
when did the revelation hit? Like, why am I doing this? And I got to stop this. What happened?
When my wife and child left me and I lost my house, and I thought, what? And all this time I thought I was living the dream, and
Hmm.
then I woke up one day and was like, what kind of sick and twisted dream has your wife and kid leaving you and losing your house? I mean,
Mm.
this was not the dream that I had planned. And so, you know, I, I realized then, and actually I didn't realize just then because I knew I was miserable. I eventually got to move back into my house, but it was empty. There was no
Mm.
sound of joy of my kid. There was nothing. I'll take it
Hmm.
back. I like to tell this story that my wife left me everything she thought I deserved because I opened the kitchen drawer when I moved back in, and she had left me one fork, one knife, and one spoon. No plates. And
Wow.
it was the ultimate feeling of like, oh my God, I am alone. And so,
Wow.
yeah, so it was awful. And so and I kind of continued down that path because that almost made me dig in even more, like, all right,
Mm.
well, you know what, I'm going to prove her wrong and be happy without her. And so I just kept
Hmm.
this spiraling vortex of doom of myself and just kept working all the hours, and it probably made me have even more self-destructive lifestyle. I saw many of sunrises, and
Mm.
staying up all night, and after my bars had closed, hanging out there till all hours of the day in the morning. And
Mm.
it was awful, and I was
Mm.
miserable, I was unhealthy, and I knew that if I kept continuing down this path that I probably wasn't going to live long, and I knew how unhappy I was. So I knew I had to finally quit some things and make some changes.
So you quit all that. You sold all your businesses?
Eventually, the first thing I did was I got real with myself, and I quit the self-destructive, you
Hmm.
know, habits and the lifestyle. I changed my schedule all around.
Hmm.
I got all organized on that front and quit a lot of things, and I quit a lot of people as well that were
Hmm.
toxic in my life. And that led me to eventually, yes, what that started me on was a path towards getting out of the nightlife business and that whole lifestyle.
And then how long was it before you reunited with your wife and got remarried?
So the good news was about a year after we got divorced, we started talking. We were mostly just trying to rekindle our friendship, and
Hmm.
we had a kid, so we had to
Yes.
talk occasionally, and then we kind of started dating, and one thing led to
Hmm.
another, and next thing you know, we got remarried. But the downside was it didn't last long because all my old habits started to come right back. I started working a ton of hours again.
Mm.
All these, my like self-destructive lifestyle just kind of started screaming back to me. And, so we were very distant and very unhappy and almost living separate lives, if you will. And then we finally sat down and had one of these really long, long, crazy, as I like to say, the Ross and Rachel from Friends long talk. And I realized it was do or die. And I realized this was the time I either had to quit doing this stuff now, or I was going to lose everything that I cared about. And so,
Again.
yeah, again, yes, again.
Again.
So we started going to counseling, and I got not only less chained in my businesses, but the crazy thing I discovered was that I had to start forgiving her for not supporting this unhealthy lifestyle of mine. Like I had the
Right.
most thick and twisted view. Like, why was she not supporting this? And then you look at it and go, why would she support that? That would make her all
Okay. So that must have been very edifying for her when the penny finally dropped and you're like, okay, I get it now.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's why, I say it all the time. Like, what do we need to do? Great. You're right. Whatever. That's it. That's what we're
Mm.
gonna do, So she's right.
Okay. So what is a strategy that this is very vast and very complex here. Like,
Yeah,
what do we quit? What do we not quit?
for sure.
I rarely quit anything. The irony is when I started this podcast the first time 3 years ago,
Yeah.
I quit it like a week later, and I never do that
Yeah.
because I knew it wasn't the right time. And I thought, I
Right.
don't care what I normally do, I'm quitting this. And I did. People were shocked because it wasn't what I normally did.
Yeah.
I knew it was not the right time. Stuff
Yeah.
was going on, and I thought, no. And it was the best thing I ever did. I kept saying to people, it was the best thing I ever did was
Yeah.
not follow through on that because it wasn't the right timing. And they're like, wow,
Yeah.
that's so unlike you.
Right.
That I'm good at. I was like, nope, I'm not, because I don't have to prove anything.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to wait until I really, really, really want to do this podcast. And I just want to talk to people.
Yeah.
And I did. And now I love my podcast. So
Absolutely.
it's great. So everything works. But what is something that you can, how do people ascertain when they should quit something or not? Now we all know you should quit the bad habits. We doesn't take a brain surgeon,
Right.
to right. Okay. Apart from that,
Right.
what do they do? Because there's confusion about this,
Yeah.
right? So I have a business and maybe it's not going so well. Do I just quit it because it's not going well? Do I get a better coach, or do I hate my business if they, what's that formula?
Well, that's a tricky one because it's not a one size fits all.
Mm.
It's literally one of those things that is different for everybody. And I've had the opportunity to coach several people on many levels to different things. From I've had some high level people that needed coaching for one thing, and I've been telling this story lately that I had a lady a few months ago that asked me to help her quit watching reality TV because she felt like it was hurting her life. And
Mm.
she wasn't wrong. It was,
Mhm.
she said, I don't like the person that it's making me. And so, so we went down that path and she quit watching reality TV and she's very happy these days. I talked to her the other day, so she's really happy. But I think it's figuring out, and a lot of times I think we all know the things that we need to quit. I mean,
Mm.
and like you said, the habits and the bad stuff, like that's the easy stuff. Yeah. Hey, if you're
Mhm.
smoking, you need to quit smoking. That's silly.
Mhm.
But it's the other things. But we seem to know that there's something that's making us unhappy, and there's something that we feel like, what, if I didn't have to do that, or I could quit that, then my life would be great. Maybe,
Mm.
not necessarily. So a lot of times it is talking to someone or finding a coach or a mentor, or sometimes just a friend that can lead you down the right path.
Mm.
But I like to do the kind of the look, feel, smell test. Like, imagine your life if that thing that you feel like is making you unhappy or is making you unhappy, what if that thing wasn't in it? Whether it is the
Mm.
toxic relationship or the bad behavior or whatever it is, if that wasn't in it, what does your life look like, taste like, smell like? What is it, like literally, what does it feel like every day when you wake up? Is it a happier, better day? Because if the
Mm.
answer is yes, then okay, well, now you have your answer. That's the thing that you need to quit.
Mm. But I think with like when I'm thinking about you and all that stuff you owned, there could have been a way for you to quit certain aspects of that and still keep those businesses, right?
It's possible, but I didn't know any other way. The only way I
Mm.
knew was to work 70, 80 hours a week, and,
Wow.
wanted to take it all on myself. And I
Mhm.
wanted to be the guy who had all the answers. And it was very hard for me to trust people, and most of that's on me because I hired the wrong people. I didn't have the right people in proper places and things like that. And so a lot of it was on me, but I knew no other way. And it wasn't until later on that I finally figured out, hey, you know what? You don't have to do it all yourself. In fact, you're better off if you don't, because you're not good at some of this stuff, even though you
Right.
think you are. You're not.
Yeah. See, I think that people sometimes don't like the businesses they have
Yeah.
because they are trying to do everything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like there are certain tasks in my business and my assistant loves doing them.
Right.
I hate them. She's like, "I love this repetitive,
Oh,
note taking or whatever." I said, "That is so awesome you work for me because you love doing what I cannot stand doing." And I
yes.
think it's really about figuring out the stuff that just takes all joy away. And we
Yeah.
all have things in our business. I'm not saying every single thing we do is super fun because we have to do stuff because we just have to do it, right? But I feel like it's quitting aspects of your work that really are making you miserable.
Absolutely. I told a friend the other day, a couple buddies of mine we're at least talking about possibly opening a business. And they said, is that really something you want to do? Because you talk about your businesses like it made you miserable. And I said, no, no,
Mhm.
no. My businesses didn't make me miserable. I made myself miserable the way I ran my businesses.
Right.
So I've learned a ton from that. So yes, I would be happy to own another business, but I will tell you, if we were to do it, it's going to be ABC for me. Like I can't do
Yeah.
what I used to do. I don't want to do that. That will bring me no joy. I don't care how much money we make. It will make me
Mhm.
miserable and probably make my wife miserable. And I'm not going down that road ever again.
Not worth it. This is the other thing. Like, we want to make money. How
Right.
much is it worth to make the money and how much hardship do you want to go through? Is it good hardship where you're just like, yeah, I'm doing the good hustle? Or is it like I just am so miserable and I'm making money, but I can't stand what I'm doing? So it's not so simple, is it?
No, not at all. Because especially when you've had some success in your career,
Mm,
and I had plenty of it, and made really good money, and we were doing well, and big, beautiful house with a pool,
mm,
and, life's great. And I got to a point where I said, you know what? I would almost rather live in a cardboard box and be happy than, great, I have all this stuff. What
mm,
is stuff? Who cares?
mm,
Like now I've gotten to a point where I'm very into the minimalism thing and
mhm.
trying to get rid of stuff all the time
Yeah,
because stuff doesn't make me happy. You know what makes me happy? My wife, my kids, my friends, my church. That's what makes me happy. And
right.
that's what I want to spend my time and my energy on.
Well, ultimately, stuff doesn't make anybody happy. It's fun
Ah,
shopping. I actually don't like
yeah,
shopping myself. I told my daughters, I wish I could
me
just
neither.
like walk into a room and have all these clothes ready in my size that are just exactly what I want and say here. So I know
Yes.
I'm always amazed when people say they love shopping. I'm like, that's to me a nightmare to spend that time going to trying to find a top or something that you need. It's like, no.
Awful.
So, I mean, it's just
Awful.
some people love shopping. They just love it. It's
I,
like, like therapy, shopping therapy. So I think
yeah.
people are using it as therapy. And I think people do, there is a buzz when you buy something, you feel empowered,
Right.
then you have
Yep.
something, it lasts about 3 seconds, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's
For
gone.
sure.
So, okay, so having all the money didn't make you happy. It's not that
No.
it made you miserable, it's that your habits made you miserable, right?
Yes.
Then, and okay,
Correct.
so what's one thing you will leave with? Um, and by the way, you had MS and you had to have chemotherapy during all of this?
Yeah. So I had finally sold all my nightclubs and bars. And my genius decision was, what was I going to do to not have to live that lifestyle again? So I decided to open a restaurant, which was the absolute single dumbest thing to ever do. Like I would have rather owned 40 different
Mhm,
nightclubs and worked 120 hours a week than ever own one more restaurant.
mhm,
It's just a horrible life.
mm,
And so I opened a restaurant not long before that awesome global pandemic started. So it was
mhm,
great timing.
mhm,
So then that thing started, and in the middle of all that, I started having these funny feelings like numbness in my feet, and I work out and run and everything, and I fell down a couple of times. I was
oh,
like, what's
wow.
going on? And so I asked my wife one night in bed, I said, hey, my feet are numb. And she said, well, you should probably go see a doctor,
Mhm.
idiot. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right, because she's always right. And so went and saw a doctor, went and saw another doctor, a neurologist, had a whole bunch of tests, MRIs, a spinal tap, which was awful.
Mm.
And then, yeah, in early June of 2020, I got the diagnosis that, hey, Mr. Banks, you have multiple sclerosis. And
Oh,
I was floored. Yeah. And
oh.
so I I did it different than most people. I went home and I realized though that my whole life had prepared me for this moment. And so I knew that it was time, like after I did all this homework and research, I knew that, okay, well, now it's time to start quitting a whole bunch of other things. Quit alcohol, quit booze, quit sedentary lifestyle, quit, all these things that contribute to that, and the way you eat and whatnot. And so, and instead of, I didn't, this is a longer story, so I'll give you the very short version, but, I didn't take all the drugs they wanted me to take. I didn't take any of the drugs that they wanted to give me that were $8,000 to $10,000 a month. I went and did all this homework and research, and I found this wonderful treatment called HSCT that they're starting to do in the States a lot more now, and even starting to be accepted by insurance and whatnot. But at the time, it was only done in other countries, Mexico, Russia, places like that. But done for years. And so I did the homework, did the research, and I went and spent 28 days at a lovely place called Clinica Ruiz in Puebla, Mexico, chemotherapy, stem cell transplant, whatnot. And I'm proud to say that was October of 2020. And so here we are, almost 4 years later, and I feel absolutely amazing. I never took any of the drugs, didn't have the side effects, didn't have all the garbage, and I feel great.
Amazing. So that's called HSCT if people have multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, I can't say enough to check it out.
Wow.
And it's also other what is it? It's multiple sclerosis, but other autoimmune diseases as well that it can help.
Oh, so like lupus.
And don't get me wrong, I'm no expert on it, but I know it helped. There's several other things. It's MS is their big push.
Wow, amazing that you found that and you didn't have to go on those drugs and all of that. Wow, so you did your research. Okay, so you're clear of that. Congratulations. I'm thrilled for you. You got your wife, your kid back, you have your home, you're cleaning out, and you're helping other people. So tell me, what's your, before we sign off here, what's your one philosophy or mindset for people? If they could just have one thought, what would that be?
My favorite line that I say 100 times a day, probably to 100 different people, and myself included, is to quit all those things that don't matter so you can live a life that truly does.
Awesome. Lloyd, this has been great. So if anybody wants to reach out to Lloyd, he has a website called LloydSpeaks.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's 2 L's.
2 L's.
OID, LloydSpeaks.com. And of course, there'll be details in the show notes. Lloyd, thank you for visiting with us here today.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe and share, and we'll see you on the next one. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jean Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jean Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.